A millionaire abandoned his wife for being infertile and unable to give him heirs. Years later, the millionaire was shocked to see his ex-wife with twins identical to him. At the luxurious Whitmore mansion, located in the elegant Las Lomas neighborhood in the city, the sun was setting, painting the sky with orange hues that reflected on the enormous dining room windows. Sloane Whitmore, a 40-year-old woman with delicate features and eyes that carried a profound sadness, meticulously adjusted the silver cutlery on the white lace tablecloth, preparing for another dinner in the hope of pleasing her husband, Garrison. "Mrs. Sloane, the tortilla soup is ready, and the mole poblano is at the perfect point," informed Mrs. Marjorie, the trusted housekeeper who had been serving the family for 20 years, while observing her mistress with worried eyes. Garrison Whitmore, owner of one of Mexico's largest construction companies, had called earlier warning that he would be bringing a special guest for dinner, his new intern, Isadora Sterling. "She has brilliant ideas for the company, dear. I need you to welcome her well," were his curt words on the phone. Sloane knew that tone of voice. It was the same one he had used for the last 5 years when the subject of children arose between them. The impossibility of producing an heir for the Whitmore empire had become a constant shadow in their marriage, a wound that deepened with each frustrated attempt, each unsuccessful treatment. "Ma'am, I don't like the way he spoke on the phone," muttered Mrs. Marjorie, nervously adjusting her starched white apron. "Something isn't right." Sloane merely nodded, feeling a knot forming in her throat. In recent months, Garrison had changed, coming home late, barely talking, and now this intern who appeared in all their conversations. The sound of high heels echoed through the marble hallway, announcing the arrival of the guests. Garrison entered first, his impeccable Italian suit contrasting with the graying hair at his temples, which gave him an even more imposing air. Right behind him, Isadora emerged as a vision that made Sloane's heart tighten. Young, no more than 25 years old, with long black hair and a red dress that seemed to have been sewn onto her slender body. "Good evening, Mrs. Whitmore," greeted Isadora, with a smile that didn't reach her dark eyes. During dinner, the tension was palpable, like the steam rising from the tortilla soup. Isadora spoke animatedly about the construction company's new projects, her melodious voice filling the room, while Garrison watched her with an interest that went far beyond the professional. Sloane maintained an educated smile, but her hands trembled slightly as she held the glass of red wine. Mrs. Marjorie, who was serving the tres leches dessert, noticed every glance, every gesture, every silence, laden with meaning. "Sloane, we need to talk," announced Garrison after dessert, his grave voice echoing through the now silent room. "Isadora is not here merely as my intern." He paused, taking a long sip of his imported drink, while Isadora smiled triumphantly. "In fact, there is something very important we need to tell you." The air in the room grew heavy, and Sloane felt her world begin to spin when she saw Garrison intertwine his fingers with Isadora's on the dining table. The sound of cutlery that Mrs. Marjorie dropped in the kitchen seemed to announce the storm that was about to come. Through the living room mirror, Sloane could see her reflection, an elegant woman in her navy blue dress now seeming to wilt under the weight of Garrison's unspoken words. Next to her, Isadora glowed in her red dress like a thorny rose about to take the place of the old garden. "Sloane, my love," Garrison began, his voice attempting to sound gentle, but laden with a coldness that froze Sloane's heart. "After so many years waiting for an heir, fate has gifted me in an unexpected way. Isadora is 2 months pregnant." The words fell like stones in the silence of the dining room. From the kitchen, Mrs. Marjorie brought her hands to her mouth, stifling a cry of indignation. Sloane felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Her hands gripped the edge of the dining table, her knuckles white against the lace tablecloth. How could you do this to me, Garrison?" Her voice came out broken, tears beginning to blur her vision. After 15 years of marriage, all the treatments, all the attempts, Isadora, with a smile of false modesty on her painted red lips, gently placed her hand on her still flat belly. "Forgive me, Mrs. Sloane, we didn't want it to be like this. Love simply happened." Her melodious voice carried a tone of feigned compassion that only made everything crueler. Garrison squeezed Isadora's hand with approval, completely blind to her dissimulation. "Love?" Sloane stood up, her chair scraping against the marble floor. "You call destroying a marriage love? She's young enough to be your daughter, Garrison." Tears now streamed freely down her face. From the kitchen door, Marjorie watched the scene, her own silent tears falling as she clutched her rosary beads tightly. Garrison abruptly stood up, slamming his fist on the table. The crystals clinked, and Sloane flinched. "Enough! I will not allow you to insult the mother of my future son." He took a deep breath, adjusting his jacket as if he were in a business meeting. "I want a divorce, Sloane, and I want you out of this house by the end of the week." "My God!" Marjorie couldn't contain her exclamation, quickly crossing herself. Isadora cast a disdainful look towards the housekeeper, but quickly returned to her mask of innocence when Garrison turned to her. "Garrison, please," Sloane pleaded, her legs trembling. "This is my home too, 15 years of marriage. You can't just—" But Garrison cut her off with a brusque gesture. "The mansion is in my name, as is everything you own. I will be generous in the divorce settlement, but I want you out of here. Isadora and my son need a home, and it will be here." His voice left no room for arguments. "A new life is beginning, Sloane. Accept it with dignity." Isadora rose gracefully, adjusting her red dress. "Mr. Garrison, perhaps we should give Mrs. Sloane a moment to process all of this." Her syrupy voice made Sloane's stomach churn. After all, it must be difficult for her to understand that some women are naturally more blessed. The venom in her words was clear, but Garrison seemed entranced by her false sweetness. "You're right, my love," Garrison agreed, kissing Isadora's hand. "Let's leave Sloane alone with her thoughts. Tomorrow, we'll begin preparations for your move." He turned to leave the room, guiding Isadora by the arm. Before passing through the doorway, Isadora cast one last triumphant glance over her shoulder, her eyes gleaming with barely contained malice. Sloane remained motionless, feeling her world crumbling around her. The walls of the mansion, which for 15 years had been her home, now seemed to close in on her. Mrs. Marjorie approached silently, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder, but Sloane could barely feel the touch. In her mind, Isadora's cruel words and victorious smile replayed themselves. The echo of Garrison and Isadora's footsteps resonated down the hallway as Sloane, her legs trembling, made her way to the mansion's majestic marble staircase. Her fingers trailed along the gilded railing she had so often touched with joy, but which now felt cold and hostile. Each step represented a year of her crumbling marriage before her eyes. "Mrs. Sloane, please wait." Marjorie called softly from the dining room door, her aged face etched with concern. But Sloane could barely hear, her ears ringing with the weight of the night's revelations. Tears blurred her vision, turning the crystal chandeliers into shimmering golden blotches above her. Halfway up the stairs, Sloane heard approaching footsteps. Isadora had returned alone, her red dress rippling like fresh blood against the white marble. She stopped one step above Sloane, leaning in with a cruel smile Garrison would never see. "You know, she whispered, her voice as sweet as poisoned honey. "Some women are born to be mothers, while others are meant only to be replaced. Soon, no one will even remember you existed in this house." The word struck Sloane like a knife. She tried to back away, but her heel caught on the edge of the step. "In the future," Isadora continued, moving closer, "your portraits will be replaced by mine, your clothes donated to charity, and your precious Garrison will be mine alone." A malicious glint flickered in her dark eyes. "And our son will be the heir you could never give him." It was at that moment that everything seemed to spin. Sloane felt the world tilt beneath her feet, her heel finally giving way. She tried to grasp the railing, but her trembling fingers found no purchase. Mrs. Marjorie's scream echoed through the mansion. "Mrs. Sloane, be careful. Oh my God!" Isadora's exclamation sounded theatrical as she recoiled, watching Sloane lose her balance. In a motion that seemed to happen in slow motion, Sloane felt her body tumbling down the stairs. Each impact against the marble steps sent waves of pain through her body, her navy blue dress billowing like broken wings. Mrs. Marjorie ran frantically toward the staircase, her sandals slapping against the floor in a frantic rhythm. "Help! Help!" Her cries echoed through the mansion as she tried to reach her mistress. From the top of the stairs, Isadora watched the scene with a subtle smile on her lips, her hand resting delicately on her supposedly pregnant belly. Sloane finally came to a stop at the foot of the stairs, her body motionless against the cold marble. A small red stain began to form beneath her head, contrasting violently with the white floor. Her eyes, still open, started to lose focus, the chandelier lights turning into distant stars. "Call an ambulance." Mrs. Marjorie's voice sounded distant now, as if coming from another world. The housekeeper knelt beside Sloane, taking her icy hand in her own. "Mrs. Sloane, please hang on." The last images Sloane registered before darkness enveloped her were Isadora's satisfied smile at the top of the stairs, and Garrison rushing in, finally drawn by the screams. "My love," she heard Isadora say with her feigned, distressed voice, "it was terrible. She just fell." As consciousness slipped away, Sloane felt one last tear roll down her cheek. The world faded to black amid the distant wail of sirens and Mrs. Marjorie's sobs, while at the top of the stairs, Isadora embraced Garrison, hiding her triumphant smile in his shoulder. Minutes later, the white lights of Angeles Hospital blinked against the city's night sky as the ambulance rushed through the emergency gates. In the back of the vehicle, Sloane remained unconscious, her pale face contrasting with the bruises beginning to form. Mrs. Marjorie, seated beside her, clutched her rosary tightly between gnarled fingers, her whispered prayers mingling with the sound of sirens. "Hurry! We have an emergency!" one of the paramedics shouted as the ambulance doors opened. Sloane's gurney slid out with her motionless body, her blood-stained navy dress billowing under the fluorescent lights of the ER. "Head trauma, possible internal bleeding, fall downstairs," the paramedic quickly informed as they rushed through the corridors. Dr. Lucia Valdez, the night shift's chief physician, immediately took charge. "Prep trauma room 3. I want a full panel of tests and an urgent CT scan." Her authoritative voice echoed through the hallways as nurses moved with practiced precision. "Ma'am," she addressed Mrs. Marjorie, who struggled to keep up with the frantic pace, "I need you to fill out the admission paperwork and provide the family's contact information." In the waiting room, Mrs. Marjorie tried to control the tremor in her hands as she dialed Garrison's number. "Mr. Whitmore," her voice trembled with barely contained indignation, "Mrs. Sloane is very ill. The doctors are conducting urgent tests and need your authorization." On the other end of the line, Garrison's voice sounded distant, almost disinterested. "I'm busy now, Marjorie. You have my authorization to sign any necessary documents." At the same moment, miles away in Isadora's luxurious apartment in the noble neighborhood, champagne glasses clinked in a morbid celebration. "Did you see her face when she fell?" Isadora laughed, sprawled on her red velvet sofa, the evening dress still marking her curves. "It was better than I expected. That old maid screaming like a madwoman. What drama!" Her nurse friend Iris, who worked at Angeles Hospital, appreciated her drink with an accomplice's smile. Back at the hospital, the corridors were a whirlwind of activity. Doctors and nurses came in and out of the trauma room, carrying blood samples and test results. Mrs. Marjorie, sitting in the hospital chapel, alternated between fervent prayers and silent tears. "My God, protect my girl. She doesn't deserve this." Dr. Lucia emerged from the examination room with a worried expression. "Mrs. Marjorie?" she called softly, her tired eyes revealing the gravity of the situation. "Mrs. Sloane has suffered significant trauma. We'll need to do a few more specific tests." She hesitated for a moment, consulting her clipboard. "Is there anything in her medical history we need to know? Any pre-existing condition or ongoing treatment?" "Mrs." Marjorie wiped away the tears with the sleeve of her uniform. She was undergoing treatment to get pregnant. For years, she tried to give her husband a child. Her voice failed as she remembered the night's events. The doctor made some quick notes, her face lighting up with sudden understanding. "I see. I'll order some additional tests immediately." Meanwhile, at Isadora's apartment, the cell phone rang. It was Garrison. "My love, don't worry about anything." Her honeyed voice dripped with falsehood. "Soon we'll be officially together, and that house will be all ours." She hung up the phone with a victorious smile, caressing her still flat belly. "Soon, very soon," she murmured to herself. "I'll be the only Mrs. Whitmore." "Dr. Lucia, you need to see this immediately." The nurse rushed into the doctor's room, holding Sloane's blood test results. The doctor adjusted her glasses and examined the papers, her eyes widening with the discovery. "Some levels in the test are elevated. This is," she murmured, double-checking the numbers several times. "Mrs. Marjorie," called Dr. Lucia, finding the governess still in the hospital chapel. "I have surprising news. Mrs. Sloane is pregnant." The words hung in the air like an unexpected blessing. "Mrs." Marjorie brought her hands to her face, tears of joy replacing those of worry. "Good heavens, after so many attempts, it's a miracle," the doctor continued, her tone now more serious. "But the situation is delicate. The trauma of the fall could have caused complications, but surprisingly, the initial tests show that the pregnancy is preserved. And there's more." She paused, consulting the results again. "The hormone levels are extraordinarily high, which may indicate a twin pregnancy." In the hospital bed, Sloane remained unconscious, monitors beeping rhythmically around her. Tubes and sensors told the silent story of her struggle, while a new life or lives grew inside her, oblivious to the unfolding drama. Mrs. Marjorie held her cold hand, whispering words of encouragement. "Stay strong, my girl. Now you have to fight for 3. In the corridor, Iris, Isadora's nurse friend, discreetly observed everything while pretending to organize medical records. Her cell phone weighed in her uniform pocket like a bomb about to explode. So as soon as she got a moment alone, she rushed to the staff bathroom and dialed the familiar number. "Isadora, I have earth-shattering news," Iris whispered, checking to make sure she was truly alone. "That idiot Sloane, she's pregnant." On the other end of the line, the sound of breaking glass indicated that Isadora had dropped her champagne glass. "What? No, it can't be. She's barren. Everyone knows that." "Worse," Iris continued, her voice low and conspiratorial. "The tests indicate it may be twins. The hormone levels are through the roof." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. When Isadora finally spoke, her voice was unrecognizable with rage. "That bitch did it. She managed to give him exactly what he's always wanted." Back in Sloane's room, Dr. Lucia was conducting further tests. "We need to do an emergency ultrasound," she explained to Mrs. Marjorie. "Confirm the pregnancy and check for any damage due to the fall." The governess nodded, her hand still gripping the rosary tightly. "And Mr. Garrison, he needs to know." "I've tried to reach him again," replied Mrs. Marjorie, bitterness in her voice. "He hung up the phone, said he's busy with his precious Isadora." The doctor shook her head in disapproval as she prepared the ultrasound equipment. "Well, busy or not, he's in for a big surprise when he finds out about this." The image began to form on the device's screen, still blurry but unmistakable. "There," Dr. Lucia pointed. "You can see there are 2 well-defined gestational sacs." Mrs. Marjorie began to cry again, this time with a radiant smile. 2 little angels. What a gift from heaven. In Isadora's apartment, plates and glasses shattered against the walls in a fit of rage. Her friend Iris was still on the phone, listening to the outburst of anger. "She was supposed to be dead," Isadora screamed. "Dead! And now she's going to give him twins. No! This can't happen." Her voice was laced with venom as a plan began to form in her wicked mind. "Iris, dear, I need you to do me a very special favor." While the hospital room was plunged into the twilight of late afternoon, when Sloane began to slowly awaken. Her eyes blinked several times, trying to adjust to the soft light coming through the window. Mrs. Marjorie, who had not left her side for a moment, immediately noticed the movement. Dr. Lucia, she's waking up." "Mrs. Sloane." The doctor quickly approached, checking the vital signs. "Can you hear me? Do you know where you are?" Sloane tried to speak, but her throat was dry. Mrs. Marjorie brought a cup of water with a straw, gently assisting her. What happened?" Sloane finally asked, her voice hoarse and weak. "You suffered a fall on the stairs, dear," Mrs. Marjorie replied, holding her hand affectionately. "But God is great and protected you. He protected you much more than you can imagine." Her eyes shone with contained tears of happiness. Dr. Lucia positioned herself next to the bed, her face soft and professional. "Mrs. Sloane, I have a very important news to give you," the doctor began, her voice calm and controlled. "During the exams, we discovered something extraordinary. You're pregnant." The silence that followed was absolute. Sloane blinked several times, as if trying to process the words. "Pregatome, pregnant," she whispered, her hand instinctively going to her belly. "Yes," Dr. Lucia continued, now smiling. "And there's more." They're twins, Sloane. Two perfectly implanted and miraculously protected babies from the fall. Tears began to stream down Sloane's face, mixing joy and fear in equal measure. All those years of trying, all the treatments, and now just when Garrison, she whispered, suddenly remembering the events of the night before. Isadora. Her heart monitor began to beep more rapidly. Calm down, my dear, Mrs. Marjorie quickly intervened. Now you need to think about you and these little angels. We'll sort out the rest later. Outside the room, Iris watched the scene through the glass window, her cell phone firmly clutched in her hand. She saw the exact moment Sloane received the news, saw the tears, saw the protective hand over her belly. With a furtive movement, she photographed the scene. In the luxurious apartment in an upscale neighborhood, Isadora's phone rang with the photo notification. She was sitting in her velvet armchair, a half-empty glass of Scotch whiskey in her hand. Garrison's favorite drink, she had learned to like it to please him. Upon seeing the image, her hand gripped the glass so hard that it cracked. So she woke up, Isadora muttered to herself, her voice laden with venom. The phone rang again. It was Iris. She's conscious and already knows about the twins, the nurse informed in a low voice. And from what I heard, she'll be discharged soon if she remains stable. Isadora stood up abruptly, walking to the window that offered a panoramic view of the city. Her reflection in the glass showed a cruel smile forming on her red lips. 2 children, she spoke, her voice now dangerously calm. 2 legitimate heirs to the Whitmore empire. No. This cannot happen. Turning back to her cell phone, she quickly typed a message to Iris. I need your access to the hospital, and I need to know exactly which medications could be problematic for a twin pregnancy. Her hand caressed her fake belly, covered by an expensive dress that Garrison had bought. If she thinks she's going to take everything I've achieved from me, she's very mistaken. At the hospital, Sloane fell asleep again, now with a slight smile on her lips, her hands protectively resting on the belly where her children were growing. Mrs. Marjorie made the sign of the cross, grateful for the miracle, unaware that in the hallway Iris was already planning her next visit, this time with a syringe hidden in her uniform pocket and very specific instructions from Isadora. In the luxurious apartment in an upscale neighborhood, Isadora watched her reflection in the full-length gold-plated mirror. With an abrupt movement, she ripped off the fake belly she wore under her designer dress, throwing it with disdain onto the huge bed. She grabbed her latest model cell phone and began recording an audio for her friend Veronica, who lived in Miami. Girl, you're not going to believe what's happening. Her voice oozed malice as she served herself another glass of Portuguese wine. Remember when I told you about my perfect plan to snag old Whitmore? Well, everything was going exactly as planned. The idiot wife of his couldn't get pregnant, and I took advantage of every moment of his frustration at the company. She paused the audio to let out a laugh, admiring the diamond ring Garrison had given her the previous week. She continued recording as she walked through the apartment decorated with priceless pieces. I bought that fake belly online, started wearing looser clothes, and let a positive pregnancy test fall out of my bag in front of him. You should have seen the look on his face, girl. That silly old fool believed everything. Isadora stopped in front of the window overlooking the city, adjusting her designer dress. The best part was when I cried, saying I was pregnant. Oh, Garrison, she imitated a crying and fake voice. I didn't know how to tell you. This baby is a blessing. He fell for it like a little duck. Today he even proposed to me and kicked that dead weight out of his house. Before she could continue her victorious audio, her cell phone rang. It was Iris, her nurse friend and accomplice at the hospital. Mari, you're not going to believe what I found out in Sloane's exams. Her voice oozed malice. That dull little woman managed the impossible. They're twins, can you believe it? 2 babies. Isadora felt her blood boil in her veins. How dare she screamed, throwing the whiskey glass against the wall. The amber liquid streamed down the white surface like golden blood. I set up this whole circus, conquer Garrison, and that useless woman just shows up pregnant with twins. And there's more, Iris continued, savoring every word. The doctors are saying it's a miracle the baby survived the fall. Garrison is going to go crazy when he finds out. You know how he's obsessed with the idea of having twins, because of his brothers who died. A scream of fury escaped Isadora's perfectly painted lips. She resumed the recording for Veronica, now with her voice shaking with rage. "Girlfriend, you won't believe it. I just found out that cow is pregnant with twins. Twins! Everything Garrison ever wanted in life, but she won't get to ruin my plans. Oh no, she won't." Stopping in front of the mirror again, Isadora admired her reflection as she continued the audio. "I've spent so much money and time to get to this point. The designer clothes, the expensive dinners, the fake belly imported from Europe. I even bought a fake ultrasound online. It won't be this idiot who's going to stop me from becoming Mrs. Whitmore." The phone rang again. It was Iris. "What are you planning, Murray?" she asked, a note of excitement in her voice. Isadora walked to her closet the size of a regular apartment. Pushing aside dozens of expensive dresses, she reached a safe embedded in the wall. Inside it, besides the priceless jewels gifted by Garrison, there was a small unlabeled bottle. "Remember that gift we got for emergencies?" Isadora asked, her voice now cold and calculating. "I think it's time to use it. You still have access to the hospital pharmacy, don't you?" "Of course I do," Iris chuckled softly. "And coincidentally, I'm scheduled for the night shift tomorrow, the shift when dear Sloane will be taking her meds to hold the pregnancy." Before hanging up, Isadora sent one last audio to Veronica. "Girlfriend, I have to go now. I need to plan a little accident at the hospital. You know how it is, right? Sometimes nurses mix up the meds, wrong dosages happen. And when Garrison loses those precious twins, I'll be his only comfort, the only one who can give him the heir he so desires." Her laughter echoed through the empty apartment, cold and cruel like the heart beating in her chest. Isadora's apartment turned into a battlefield as she processed the news of the twins. Priceless crystal vases shattered against the walls, designer dresses flew through the air, and bottles of imported liquor lay broken on the Italian marble floor. "Twins!" she screamed, her face contorted into a mask of pure hatred. "That damn woman had been trying for years and now she gets twins?" Isadora grabbed her fake silicone belly and tore it to shreds, throwing the remains over the balcony. "All my work, all my dedication. Garrison will forget all about me the moment he finds out." The phone rang again. It was Iris. "Marie, I have more details," the nurse spoke quickly. "Sloane is in room 507, East Wing. Security is minimal during the shift change, between 11:30 and midnight. And tomorrow she starts the treatment to strengthen the pregnancy." Isadora approached her vanity, watching her reflection in the mirror as a cruel smile formed on her red lips. "Iris, darling, I need your help, but this time it'll cost more." She opened a drawer, retrieving a thick envelope full of cash. "How much is your loyalty worth?" "It depends on what you're planning," Iris replied, the greed evident in her voice. "Switching medications is one thing, but if we're talking something more drastic, the price goes up." 50,000, Isadora said coldly, counting the bills. "Half now, half after the job is done. I need you to get an extra nurse's uniform and a blank ID badge, and of course I need to know exactly which meds she's taking." Walking to her closet, Isadora opened the safe again and retrieved the mysterious bottle. "Remember this little gift we got from that pharmacist? It's time to use it, but we need to be smart. Nothing lethal or suspicious. We want it to look like a sad natural complication. The doctors are already worried about the frailty of the pregnancy because of the fall," Iris commented, thoughtful. "If something happens, everyone will just assume it was a consequence of the trauma." Isadora flopped down on her velvet armchair, grabbing her tablet to take notes. "Perfect. Now tell me the exact times of the rounds, which nurses will be on duty. And most importantly, I want to know if that meddling housekeeper usually sleeps at the hospital." As Iris provided the information, Isadora elaborated every detail of the plan. On her tablet, a hospital blueprint began filling up with notes, escape routes, security cameras, blind spots. "The shift change is our best chance," she muttered. "You distract the head nurse with some fake emergency, and I go in posing as part of the new staff. Marie," Iris hesitated for the first time. If we get caught, Isadora interrupted with a cold laugh. "Darling, you're already in as deep as I am. Or did you think that little staircase fall was really an accident? I just need you to keep your mouth shut and do your part. Money will be the least of your problems if you decide to betray me." The veiled threat hung in the air for a few seconds before Iris responded, "Okay, I'll have everything ready for tomorrow night, but I want my money up front." Of course, Isadora smiled, her voice now syrupy. "Come pick it up in an hour, and bring the uniform and badge." Hanging up the phone, she walked to her luxurious bathroom and began studying her reflection. With a few adjustments to her makeup and hairstyle, she could easily pass for any young nurse just starting her career. Back to the room, Isadora poured herself another dose of whiskey and grabbed the mysterious vial, studying the clear liquid against the light. "You know, Sloane," she spoke to the emptiness, as if rehearsing, "it's really a pity. 2 little babies at once. What a dream, isn't it?" But unfortunately, she laughed, tucking the vial into her designer purse, accidents happen, and when they do, who will be there to console Garrison? Who will help him overcome yet another family tragedy? Ah yes, his devoted and beloved Isadora. The sun began to set over the city, painting the sky a bloody red. Isadora watched the spectacle from her balcony, savoring each sip of whiskey. "Tomorrow at this hour," she whispered to herself, "the Whitmore Empire will be secured in my hands, and those most precious twins, well, they'll never be more than a sad story to tell." Night fell over the city as Iris arrived at Isadora's apartment, carrying a discreet bag. "I brought everything," she said, spreading the items across the marble table. A crisp white uniform, a blank badge, and a sealed syringe with a clear liquid. "Perfect," Isadora smiled, picking up the uniform. "Now help me with the transformation. I need to look like an ordinary nurse, nothing that draws attention." She walked into the bedroom, where a small disguise station was already set up. A plain brown wig, dark contact lenses to darken her light eyes, and neutral makeup to replace her glamorous look. "The medication you asked for is here," Iris showed the syringe. "I managed to swap the label. If anyone catches you, it will look like it's just a prenatal vitamin." She placed the syringe in a medical case, along with other common medications. "But Mari, are you sure this will look like a spontaneous loss?" Isadora finished coldly, trying on the uniform. Natural, sad, and completely understandable after such a severe fall. She adjusted the fake badge, where a makeup-free, bespectacled photo of herself rendered her unrecognizable. "Angela Alcott," she read the false name, practicing a gentle, concerned expression in the mirror. Iris's phone rang. It was from the hospital. "Damn, I have to go back. The head nurse is looking for me." She grabbed the envelope of cash Isadora had set aside. "Remember, employee entrance at 11:45. I'll accidentally leave the side door unlocked." Alone again, Isadora began her transformation. The brown wig replaced her long black hair, brown contacts covered her feline green eyes, and basic makeup erased her striking features. In the mirror, an ordinary, forgettable nurse stared back. "Much more suitable for a nighttime visit," she murmured, practicing a gentle smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her phone buzzed, a message from Garrison. "My love, is everything okay? Can we have dinner tomorrow?" Isadora quickly replied, keeping up her role as a concerned fiancé. "Of course, darling. I just need to rest today. This pregnancy sometimes leaves me so tired." The irony made her laugh as she pocketed her phone. Across town, Sloane rested in her hospital bed, unaware of the serpent preparing to strike. Isadora opened her newly purchased nurse's bag, checking each item. The deadly syringe disguised as a vitamin, sterile gloves, the fake badge, a clipboard with forged medical papers. Her phone rang one last time. Iris again. "Everything's ready here. The shift change will be at the regular time." Sloane took a sedative and should be sleeping deeply by 11. The governess was finally convinced to go home and rest. She paused. "Mari, after this there's no going back." "Dear," Isadora answered, her voice as cold as the scalpel that would end 2 innocent lives. "Since the moment I set my eyes on Garrison Whitmore, there was no going back. That idiot Sloane had her chance, 15 years of chances. Now it's my turn." Approaching the window, Isadora observed the lights of the city that would soon be her empire. Somewhere down there, Angela's hospital awaited her deadly visit. Her reflection in the glass showed not the beautiful, ambitious Isadora, but an anonymous nurse Angela, ready for her night shift. "You know what's most delicious," she whispered to her transformed reflection. "When it all goes wrong, when those precious twins don't make it, I'll be the one consoling Garrison. I'll be the one helping him overcome yet another tragedy. She caressed her false baby bump. And in a few months I'll announce that my baby, my imaginary baby, is also gone. Our shared pain will bind us forever. The clock read 11:15. Isadora grabbed her keys, the nurse's bag, and took one last look in the mirror. The disguise was perfect. No one would recognize Garrison Whitmore's stylish fiancée in this plain nurse. With a smile that perfectly matched her black heart, she whispered to her reflection, "Truth time, Angela. We have 2 little lives to snuff out." The apartment door closed silently behind her. In the mirrored elevator, Isadora rehearsed her concerned professional expression one last time. In 15 minutes, she would be just another dedicated nurse, tending to patients through the quiet night. And when the sun rose again over the city, 2 tiny lives would have flickered out. A sad hospital accident, nothing more. The sound of her plain white shoes echoed down the hallway as she walked to her car. The deadly syringe rested in her bag, awaiting the moment to turn dreams into nightmares. The night promised to be productive. The night at Angela's hospital was quiet, broken only by the distant beeping of heart monitors and the occasional murmur of the overnight staff. Isadora, now transformed into Nurse Angela Alcott, crossed the parking lot with measured steps. Her crisp white uniform reflected the harsh hospital lights, while her bag carried the instrument of her revenge. At the service entrance, she found the door unlocked, just as Iris had promised. The first real test came at the security desk. "Good evening," said the sleepy guard, looking up from his phone. "ID, please." With smooth and practiced movements, Isadora presented the forged badge. Her heart was pounding, but her face maintained the bored expression of a professional at the end of her shift. "Night shift," she murmured, adjusting her fake glasses. The guard examined the badge for a few eternal seconds before nodding affirmatively. "Angela Alcott. Ah yes, you're new, aren't you?" he commented, handing back the badge. "Iris mentioned we'd have a substitute today." Isadora merely smiled politely, mentally thanking her accomplice for the impeccable groundwork preparation. In the white and aseptic corridors, she moved like a silent shadow. The sound of her white shoes was muffled by the hospital floor as she discreetly greeted other staff with a nod of her head. In the East Wing, near room 507, Isadora found Iris waiting anxiously. "Everything's ready," the accomplice nurse whispered. "Sloane took a strong sedative an hour ago. She's sleeping deeply." Iris looked nervously around before continuing. "The medication cart is prepared. I switched the labels as agreed." Isadora took the syringe from her bag, skillfully hiding it among the other medications on the cart. With sterile gloves, she began preparing the lethal mixture, her hands moving with rehearsed precision. "How much time do we have?" "The next round will be in 40 minutes, Iris replied, "but there's something you need to know." Before she could continue, the sound of approaching footsteps made the 2 separate quickly. A nurse passed by them, casting a curious glance at the new colleague. On the 5th floor, the silence was even deeper. Isadora pushed the medication cart towards Sloane's room, each meter bringing her closer to her revenge. Through the room's window, she could see her victim sleeping peacefully, one hand resting on the belly where the twins that threatened her plans were growing. "Time for your meds, dear," Isadora murmured to herself, a cruel smile forming on her lips as she prepared the syringe. The clear liquid glistened under the fluorescent lights like crystal tears. But just as she was about to enter the room, an unexpected movement at the end of the corridor made her freeze. Mrs. Marjorie, still dressed in her day clothes, was walking towards the room carrying a small bag. "I couldn't sleep at home," the housekeeper explained to a nurse trying to convince her to respect visiting hours. "I just brought a Medal of Our Lady to protect my girl and the babies. It'll be quick, please." Isadora silently retreated with her cart, hiding in the equipment room. Through the crack in the door, she watched the housekeeper's untimely arrival with hatred. Her cell phone vibrated, a message from Iris. "I tried to warn you. The old lady's back. What do we do now?" With her teeth clenched in anger, Isadora watched Mrs. Marjorie enter Sloane's room. The housekeeper delicately hung a silver chain on the headboard, making the sign of the cross before sitting in the armchair by the bed. She seemed determined to spend the night there. "No matter," Isadora typed back. "I'll wait as long as it takes. That meddling old woman won't sleep here forever, and when she leaves..." her eyes fixed on the syringe in her hands. "We'll make sure those babies never see the light of day." After an agonizing 2-hour wait, Mrs. Marjorie finally began dozing off in the room's armchair. Isadora, who had been patiently watching from the equipment room, saw her chance. With silent, snake-like movements about to strike, she pushed the medication cart towards room 507. "Excuse me," she whispered, entering the room with her best professional expression. "I need to administer the night medications." Mrs. Marjorie woke with a start, adjusting herself in the armchair while observing the nurse with sleepy eyes. "But didn't Nurse Iris already give the meds?" the housekeeper asked, frowning. Isadora didn't hesitate, already prepared for this question. "Oh no, these are the new medications Dr. Lucia prescribed to strengthen the pregnancy," she explained softly, showing a clipboard with forged papers. "They're special vitamins for gestation." As she prepared the syringe with the lethal liquid, Isadora felt Mrs. Marjorie's piercing gaze on her. The housekeeper found something familiar about that nurse, but couldn't quite pinpoint what. "I don't remember seeing you before," she commented cautiously. "I'm new to the night shift," Isadora replied, approaching Sloane's IV drip. "Angela Alcott, pleased to meet you." Her gloved hands worked with studied precision, connecting the syringe to the IV tubing. It was at this moment that it happened. As she leaned over Sloane, a strand of hair escaped from her wig. Mrs. Marjorie, who hadn't taken her eyes off her, noticed the natural black shine under the fake brown. Her heart raced with sudden recognition. "Wait!" The housekeeper stood up abruptly. "Let me see your badge again." Isadora froze for a second, the syringe already half connected. She needed to act fast. With a swift motion, she pushed the syringe's plunger, releasing the liquid into the IV drip before Mrs. Marjorie could stop her. "Is there a problem?" she asked, keeping her voice calm as she turned to face the housekeeper. You're not," Mrs. Marjorie began to say, but Isadora was already in motion. With a calculated shove, she knocked over the medication cart, creating a noisy distraction. "Oh my God, how clumsy of me," she exclaimed loudly, crouching to pick up the scattered vials. "Please help me here." Mrs. Marjorie instinctively bent down to help, but her eyes never left the face of the fake nurse. At this moment, Sloane began to stir in bed, disturbed by the noise. A soft moan escaped her lips, and the cardiac monitors started showing subtle changes. Isadora knew it was time to leave. "I'll go get help to clean up this mess," she said quickly, heading for the door. But Mrs. Marjorie was already on her feet, her face a mask of horror as she finally recognized those eyes even under the contact lenses. "Help!" screamed the governess. "Hold her! It's Isadora!" But the villain was already running down the hallway, ripping off her wig and fake badge as she fled. Behind her, chaos ensued. Sloane's monitors began to beep more intensely, her heart rate changing. Nurses rushed towards the room, while Mrs. Marjorie screamed desperately. "The medicines! She tampered with the medicines!" Isadora reached the emergency stairwell, descending the steps 2 at a time. Her disguise was ruined, but it didn't matter. Her mission was accomplished. The poison was already coursing through Sloane's veins, headed straight for the precious twins that threatened her plans. On the 5th floor, Iris watched the commotion in horror. She hadn't expected Mrs. Marjorie to recognize Isadora, hadn't expected everything to go so wrong. Now she needed to think fast about how to protect her own involvement in the scheme. Sloane, in her bed, began to writhe in pain. Her monitors triggered increasingly urgent alerts as the medical team scrambled to understand what was happening. The poison was taking effect, threatening not only the babies, but Sloane's own life. "Call Dr. Lucia," someone yelled. "And call security. We have a criminal in the hospital." But Isadora was long gone, her car speeding through the city night, a cruel smile on her lips as she imagined the scene she'd left behind. "Goodbye, little Whitmore heirs," she murmured to herself. "It was a pleasure never to meet you." Sloane's room at Angela's hospital had become a scene of nightmare. Sloane, formerly peacefully asleep, now writhed on the hospital bed, her face contorted in an expression of deep pain. The heart monitors filled the space with their shrill alerts, their red lights flashing like beacons of imminent danger. "My daughter, my angels," Mrs. Marjorie screamed, her trembling hands clutching Sloane's icy one. "Please, somebody do something." The governess alternated between desperate prayers and cries for help, watching helplessly as her beloved charge suffered. A team of nurses rushed into the room, moving with urgent professionalism. "Blood pressure crashing," one announced, checking the monitors. "Erratic fetal heartbeats in both babies," another added, positioning the ultrasound wand over Sloane's belly. It was her, that viper Isadora disguised as a nurse. "Mrs." Marjorie frantically explained to anyone who would listen. "She injected something into the IV. I saw it. I recognized those snake eyes." Dr. Lucia came running into the room, still wearing pajamas under her hastily donned lab coat. "I want a full tox panel now," she commanded, taking charge of the situation. "And get the emergency OB team here, stat." Sloane briefly opened her eyes, her unfocused gaze searching the room for something or someone. My babies," she whispered, before another wave of pain made her arch off the bed. The machines began beeping even more frantically. "We're losing the heartbeat on the first baby," a nurse cried, shifting the ultrasound probe desperately. "The second is showing fetal distress too." "No!" Mrs. Marjorie's scream echoed through the room. "Blessed Mother, please no, they are innocent lives." The governess clutched her rosary so tightly, the knuckles turned white, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Prep the OR!" Dr. Lucia ordered, her authoritative voice cutting through the chaos. Extreme measures may be required to save at least one. It was at that moment Iris appeared in the doorway, her face pale as she took in the scene. She knew exactly what Isadora had used, but revealing that would mean confessing her own involvement. Her silence could cost 3 lives, but speaking up could cost her freedom. "Doctor," a nurse called, "we found this in the hallway." It was the vial discarded by Isadora in her hurried escape. Iris felt her blood run cold. That vial could be the key to identifying the poison. The next few minutes seemed to drag like hours. The medical team worked frantically, trying to stabilize Sloane and save the twins. Mrs. Marjorie prayed non-stop, her pleas mingling with the beeps of the machines and the barked medical orders. "Prepare epi. Another dose of..." "The heartbeats are..." Voices overlapped in the room, creating a chaotic symphony of desperation and hope. Suddenly, a deathly hush fell over the space. One of the fetal heart monitors emitted a single, terrifying flatline tone. "No, no, no." Mrs. Marjorie crumpled to her knees, rosary still clutched tightly. "Please God, do not allow this." Dr. Lucia sprang into action, barking orders as they wheeled Sloane's gurney out of the room. "To the OR now. We may still be able to save one." The hospital corridor became a blur of lights and sounds as the team rushed with Sloane. Mrs. Marjorie tried to keep up, her aged legs barely able to match the pace. At the OR doors, they swung shut, leaving Mrs. Marjorie devastated and powerless on the outside. Through the window, she could see the frantic movement of the medical personnel inside, battling to save what remained of the family she loved so dearly. The clock on the wall ticked off each merciless second as 3 lives hung by a thread, and somewhere in the city, Isadora was no doubt celebrating her successful revenge. The operating room at Angeles Hospital was a hive of frenetic activity. Under the bright lights, Dr. Lucia commanded a team of surgeons and nurses in a race against time. Sloane, unconscious on the table, was hooked up to a barrage of monitors, screaming constant warnings. "Stabilize her BP." "We can't do any procedures with those levels," the doctor ordered, her skilled hands working quickly. "Where are those tox results?" A nurse rushed over with the papers, handing them off with shaking hands. "Doctor, we've identified the substance," the toxicologist who had just entered said. "It's an experimental compound, extremely dangerous. It acts directly on the circulatory system, targeting smaller blood vessels like those in the placenta." In the hospital chapel, Mrs. Marjorie was on her knees, her worn rosary slipping between her knotted fingers as she murmured uninterrupted prayers. Candles flickered around her, each one lit with a desperate prayer. "Our Lady, protect my girl. Protect those innocent little angels." Meanwhile, in her luxurious apartment, Isadora paced like a caged beast. Her cell phone was silent. Iris had not sent any news yet. "That useless thing," she muttered, pouring herself another drink. "If she opens her mouth, I'll end her too." The phone finally rang, but it was Garrison. Isadora took a deep breath, composing her voice to sound sweet and concerned. "Love? Is everything okay?" "My love, sorry for calling so late." Garrison's voice sounded tired on the other end. "I just wanted to say that I have an important meeting tomorrow morning in a nearby town. I'll catch the first flight." Isadora smiled maliciously. Garrison had no idea that at that very moment, his ex-wife was fighting for her life along with his true heirs. "Of course, dear. Rest well. I also need to rest, you know. The pregnancy sometimes leaves me so tired." Back in the operating room, the situation was worsening. "The second baby's heartbeat is dropping," announced one of the doctors. "We need to do something now, with or without stabilization." "Prepare for a possible emergency surgery," ordered Dr. Lucia, her forehead glistening with sweat under the surgical cap. "God help us save at least one of them." In the hallway, the hospital management started to arrive, taking statements from the staff who was on duty. Iris was hiding in the lounge, her heart racing every time the hospital's top management passed through the corridors. The night advanced over the city, and at different points in the city the drama unfolded. Sloane fighting for her life in the operating room, Mrs. Marjorie kneeling in supplication in the chapel, Isadora savoring her revenge in her luxurious apartment, and Garrison, completely oblivious, sleeping in his empty mansion. Blood pressure dropping rapidly. The scream of a nurse cut through the tense air of the operating room. "We're losing her." Dr. Lucia worked even faster, her hands moving with surgical precision. "I'm not going to lose any of the three," she muttered determinedly. "Not today, not like this." In the chapel, Mrs. Marjorie lit another candle, her tears falling silently. "Sloane, my girl, be strong. Your babies need you. Fight, please, fight." Isadora's phone vibrated, a message from Iris. "The management is at the hospital. They're investigating. Sloane in emergency surgery, one of the babies." Isadora deleted the message before finishing reading it, a cruel smile playing on her lips as she poured another drink. "Let them investigate," she muttered to herself. "They won't find anything. And tomorrow, when Garrison returns from his important meeting, I'll be the one to console him for the terrible tragedy that happened to his ex-wife." The monitors in the operating room continued their anguished symphony of alerts and alarms. The medical team worked in perfect synchronicity, every precious second in the fight to save 3 lives. Dr. Lucia, scalpel in hand, said a silent prayer before making the first surgical intervention to prevent something terrible from happening. "Now it's up to God," she whispered, as the operating room filled with a palpable tension. Sloane's fate and that of her twins was about to be decided under those intense lights, while the city night kept its secrets and its evils. Minutes passed, and the tension was still in the air. "We need to neutralize this poison now," Dr. Lucia's voice cut through the tense air of the emergency room. Her experienced hands worked quickly, connecting new medications to Sloane's IV. "Every minute that passes is crucial to saving this pregnancy." The heart monitors continued their anguished symphony. The twins' heartbeats, which had become alarmingly weak, were now struggling to stay steady. The first baby, which they had almost lost, showed tenuous signs of recovery, while the second maintained its irregular but persistent heartbeats. "Doctor, the toxin levels in the blood are still rising," the anesthesiologist informed, his eyes fixed on the monitors. "The antidote isn't taking effect yet. We need a more aggressive approach." "Start a blood purification immediately," ordered Dr. Lucia, not taking her eyes off the fetal monitors, "and increase the dose of the placental protector. We cannot allow this poison to cross the barrier and reach the babies." Outside the emergency room, Mrs. Marjorie paced back and forth, alternating between prayers and moments of deep reflection. Her aged face was marked not only by tears, but by a growing determination. "Sir," she called one of the hospital managers who had just arrived, "I need to tell you everything I saw. That viper Isadora, she planned this from the beginning." Her voice trembled with contained anger. "First the fall down the stairs, now this. She wants to destroy this pregnancy at any cost." Inside the emergency room, the battle continued. "The vital signs are fluctuating too much," one of the doctors alerted. "Doctor." Lucia worked even faster, adjusting medications and monitoring every little change in Sloane's and the twins' vital signs. "We have to maintain this pregnancy," she muttered, determined. Sloane has already lost so much, has suffered enough. We're not going to let that criminal win. Blood pressure stabilizing, announced a nurse, a first sign of hope. The fetal heartbeats are also responding to the treatment. The toxicologist rushed in with new results. Doctor, we identified the exact compound. It's an experimental substance that directly attacks the placenta. But we have the specific antidote in the central lab. Bring it immediately, ordered Dr. Lucia, and prepare a double dose. We need to ensure that both babies are protected. Sloane, even unconscious, seemed to be fighting with all her might. Her body responded positively to the treatments, as if understanding that 2 little lives depended on her survival. The toxin levels are starting to drop, the anesthetist informed, after another hour of intensive treatment. The antidote is working. Outside, Mrs. Marjorie received the updates with a mixture of relief and concern. Thank God, she whispered, clutching her rosary. Our Lady is protecting my little angels. In the emergency room, the team began to see positive results. The fetal heartbeats gradually strengthened, and Sloane's vital signs stabilized. The poison was being neutralized, and the pregnancy miraculously was holding on. We'll keep her under constant observation, declared Dr. Lucia, finally allowing herself a sigh of relief. The next few days will be critical, but I think we made it. The babies are strong, just like their mother. A nurse performed one last ultrasound, confirming that both fetuses were responding well to the treatment. It's impressive, she commented, how they remain so strong. Dr. Lucia allowed herself a small smile. The irony of fate sometimes had a peculiar sense of justice. Those little warriors had survived not only the fall down the stairs, but also a direct attempt on their lives. They were true fighters, just like their mother. 3 days after the attempt, room 507 at Angeles Hospital had become a true fortress. Hospital security guards stood watch at the door, and all nurses went through rigorous identification before entering. Sloane, now conscious and visibly stronger, rested in her bed as Dr. Lucia examined the results of her latest tests. It's almost a miracle, declared the doctor, smiling as she showed the most recent ultrasound. Not only did we completely neutralize the poison, but the twins are perfectly healthy. Your children are true warriors, Sloane. Mrs. Marjorie, who hadn't left the room even to sleep, wiped away tears of joy. When can I take her home, doctor? Gert's no longer safe here. That viper might try something again. Precisely for that reason, replied Dr. Lucia, I've already arranged everything for Sloane's discharge tomorrow. But not to your home. I got a private and discreet clinic in the countryside, specialized in high-risk pregnancies. No one but us will know the address. Sloane caressed her belly protectively. But what about Garrison? He needs to know that. He doesn't need to know anything for now, Mrs. Marjorie interrupted firmly. That man chose to believe that snake's lies. Let him think you simply disappeared to recover from the fall. When these little angels are born, then he'll know everything. At that moment, a young hospital supervisor rushed into the room. Mrs. Sloane, we found something you need to see. She was holding a phone with security camera footage. We managed to recover the recordings from the hospital parking lot. They show Isadora arriving in disguise and... She hesitated, looking meaningfully at Mrs. Marjorie. And what, my child? The governess pressed. And she wasn't alone. There are clear images of Iris, the nurse, handing her something before the attempt. The two of them are accomplices. Sloane closed her eyes, feeling a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with her pregnancy. Iris, who had cared for her after the fall, who had access to all her exams. My God, she must have been the one who told Isadora about the twins. There's more, the supervisor continued. We found this in Iris's locker. She showed a photo of a thick envelope with cash. 50,000 in cash, and we found records of frequent calls between her and a number registered under Isadora's name. Mrs. Marjorie stood up, her eyes flashing with anger. That traitor! Where is she now? Disappeared, replied the supervisor. She didn't show up for her shift today. Suddenly, Sloane's cell phone began to ring. The number was unknown, but something about the display caught her attention. It was an area code from a nearby city, the same city where Garrison had traveled. The room fell completely silent. The supervisor nodded positively. The call was being traced. With trembling hands, Sloane answered, putting it on speakerphone. Sloane? Iris's voice sounded nervous, almost hysterical. Sloane, forgive me. I didn't know she would go that far. Isadora, she's completely lost it. She's here in a nearby town planning something against Garrison. She found out he's investigating her pregnancy, that he's starting to suspect. The sound of a door slamming interrupted Iris. A familiar and threatening voice sounded in the background. Who are you talking to, dear friend? Everyone's blood in the room froze upon recognizing Isadora's voice. The cell phone picked up sounds of struggle, a muffled scream, and then silence. Hello? Hello? Sloane called desperately. After a tense few seconds, Isadora's voice emerged, smooth and venomous. Well, it seems not even poison is enough to finish you off, is it, Sloane? But don't worry. If I can't have your precious twins, I'll at least make sure they grow up orphans. Garrison will be next, and after that, who knows? Accidents happen all the time. The call was abruptly ended, leaving only the sound of the busy signal echoing in the silent room. The hospital supervisor was already on the phone, recording all of Isadora's speech. Sloane, pale as a sheet, clutched Mrs. Marjorie's hand. We need to be careful. She's going to destroy us. The private clinic room where Sloane was recovering was quiet, except for the soft sound of the fetal heart monitors. It was late at night, and Mrs. Marjorie was doing crossword puzzles to stay awake during her constant vigil, when Sloane's cell phone rang again, the same number from the nearby town. Put it on speakerphone, Sloane whispered, her heart racing. Mrs. Marjorie moved closer to the bed, holding her protégé's hand as she answered the call. Sloane? Sloane? It's me again. Iris's voice was even shakier than before. I managed to escape. I'm in hiding. I need to tell you everything before she finds me. Heavy breathing on the other end of the line indicated she was on the move. Isadora. Her pregnancy is fake. All fake. She bought a silicone belly online, falsified exams, everything. Sloane and Mrs. Marjorie exchanged shocked looks. Go on, Sloane urged, while the housekeeper discreetly recorded the call on her own cell phone. She has a safe in her apartment. All the receipts are in there. The fake belly, the manipulated pregnancy tests, even an ultrasound bought from a Chinese website. Iris seemed to be crying. I helped her with everything. She paid me a fortune. But now she wants to scam Garrison. He started asking questions about her exams, wants to take her to a specialist. A sound of a door slamming on the other end of the line made Iris stop abruptly. Tense seconds of silence followed before she spoke again, now in whispers. She's attending a charity event at the Imperial Hotel tomorrow night. The entire high society of the city will be there. Garrison is going to officially announce the engagement, and another noise interrupted her. Oh my God, I think she found me. Sloane, the safe is behind the painting of the famous Mexican artist Vivian in her living room. The password is... The call dropped. Sloane and Mrs. Marjorie remained silent for a few seconds, processing the information. We need to get into that apartment before she destroys all the evidence. While the housekeeper contacted the authorities, Sloane researched the charity event on her tablet. Here it is, she showed the screen to Mrs. Marjorie. Annual Imperial Hotel Charity Gala of the city. Garrison is going to make the official engagement announcement, and her eyes widened as she read the next part. Isadora will do a special pregnancy photo shoot displayed on the event's big screen. Mrs. Marjorie finished a few calls, a determined smile on her aged face. I managed to speak with an acquaintance who works in her building, and more, I convinced them to let us in. After all, we know exactly where to look. 2 hours later, Isadora's luxurious apartment was raided. Sloane, in a wheelchair and protected by people who also worked in the building, and Mrs. Marjorie guided them straight to the painting indicated by Iris. The password, Sloane muttered in frustration. She was going to tell us the password. Wait, Mrs. Marjorie approached the safe, studying the numbers. Knowing that viper, it must be something related to Garrison. Her eyes scanned the apartment, stopping on a photo of him on the table. What's his birthday, Sloane? March 15th, 1975, Sloane replied automatically. Mrs. Marjorie typed in the numbers, and the safe opened with a soft click. Inside, a veritable collection of evidence awaited. Receipts for an imported silicone fake belly, manipulated pregnancy tests, falsified medical documents, and even a flash drive with edited ultrasound photos. My God, Sloane whispered, flipping through the documents. She planned everything down to the smallest detail. "Ma'am," called one of Mrs. Marjorie's friends, examining Isadora's cell phone found in a drawer. "We found messages between her and Nurse Iris planning the hospital attempt, and more, we found the name of the poison supplier." Mrs. Marjorie held the silicone fake belly with disgust. That wretched woman. She fooled everyone with this cheap farce. Sloane felt her babies move, as if sensing her agitation. Caressing her belly, she looked at the evidence being catalogued by the police officers. "The charity event is tomorrow night," she said determinedly, "and Garrison will know the whole truth before making that announcement." Mrs. Marjorie approached with an envelope found in the safe. "Ma'am, I think you'll want to see this." Inside were photos of Sloane on the mansion's staircase, taken moments before her fall. The angle revealed Isadora strategically positioned at the top of the stairs. "She planned everything from the start," Mrs. Marjorie muttered, her voice trembling with rage. "The fall wasn't an accident, and now she's planning something with Garrison." Sloane's phone rang again, an unknown number. Everyone in the apartment froze. On the screen, a text message from Isadora. "Looking for something in my apartment, dear, don't worry. Tomorrow night everyone will know who the real Mrs. Whitmore is." In the presidential suite of the Continental Hotel, Sloane and Mrs. Marjorie worked frantically to organize all the evidence. The dining table had been turned into an improvised operations center, covered in documents, photos, and evidence against Isadora. "The doctors gave me special clearance to travel," Sloane explained, caressing her belly as she organized the fake belly photos. "But we only have tonight to put everything together. The event starts at 8 o'clock tomorrow. The presentation on the big screen will be the perfect moment," said Sergeant Pembroke, spreading out the Imperial Hotel blueprints on the table. "When Isadora tries to show her fake pregnancy photo shoot, we'll reveal the truth." Mrs. Marjorie, who was supervising 2 technicians working on laptops, called everyone's attention. "Look at this. We managed to recover her emails with the Chinese company that sold the fake belly. She even requested a specific model to look more real in the photos." The phone rang. It was a hospital in a nearby city. Iris had woken up and was willing to record a video testimony. "Quick," the sergeant ordered his team. "Go get that testimony on video right now. We need her conscious and lucid." Sloane watched a recovered security camera video from the mansion, clearly showing Isadora pushing her down the stairs. Her hands trembled with restrained anger. "How was I so blind? How did I not see what she was doing?" "The lady had a pure heart," consoled Mrs. Marjorie, placing a cup of calming tea beside Sloane. "That viper is the professional at deceiving people. Look at this." The governess showed more documents found in the safe. She even forged a complete prenatal medical history. One of Sloane's friends rushed into the suite, carrying a laptop. "Ladies, we've gained access to the photographer's email hired for the event. Isadora sent him a series of edited photos for the presentation. They're all digitally manipulated to show a false pregnancy progression." "And Garrison? Did you manage to locate him?" asked Sloane, worried. "He's in a meeting at the construction company's office," her friend replied. "We have people in disguise keeping an eye on him. Isadora has tried to contact him 3 times already, but he's too busy to answer." Time passed quickly as the team prepared the exposure. Technicians worked on editing the video that would be shown, interspersing the evidence with Iris's testimony. "Mrs. Sloane," called one of the technicians, "in what order do you want the revelations? Do we start with the fake belly or the proofs of the attempt?" Sloane thought for a moment. "The pregnancy farce first. Let Garrison see who she really is. Then we show how she tried to kill me. Twice." Mrs. Marjorie supervised the organization of the physical evidence, the silicone belly, the falsified exams, the invoices. Each item was photographed and included in the presentation that would replace Isadora's false pregnancy photo shoot. "The guests will start arriving at 7, her friend informed, consulting her notes. "Isadora scheduled her big reveal for 9. Our teams will be positioned at all strategic points by 6:30. A technology professional hired by Mrs. Marjorie performed the final tests on the hotel's sound and video system. We've gained full access to the system. When we give the signal, our presentation will automatically replace hers." Sloane felt her babies moving, as if they were participating in the general commotion. She caressed her belly gently, whispering, "Calm down, my loves. Tomorrow, Mommy will show everyone who Isadora really is." Mrs. Marjorie's cell phone rang. It was a contact from the hotel. "The Viper just confirmed the event rehearsal for tomorrow at 4, she informed after hanging up. "She wants to check the lighting and the big screen personally." "Perfect. That way we'll have time to make the final adjustments after seeing exactly how she planned her presentation." The night advanced, and the tension grew with every hour. In the suite, each person had their well-defined role, working like a well-oiled machine to expose Isadora's true face. "One last thing," said Sloane, her voice laden with determination. "When everything is revealed, I want to be there. I want her to see me, pregnant with the true Whitmore heirs, as her castle of lies crumbles." On the morning of the big event, two completely different worlds prepared themselves. At the Continental Hotel, Sloane held in her hands the invitations to the charity event, courtesy of the Imperial Hotel's own manager, who was horrified to learn of Isadora's true nature. "Front row seats," confirmed Mrs. Marjorie, checking the golden cards. "Right in front of the big screen where that Viper planned her grand presentation." The governess organized a black folder, with all the evidence already catalogued and ready to be handed over to the police at the right moment. Meanwhile, at the Imperial Hotel's luxurious spa, Isadora savored a glass of champagne, which everyone thought was sparkling water, while getting her prenatal massage. "Tonight will be historic," she commented to the masseuse. "I'm going to announce that I'm expecting twins. Garrison will be so excited. He's always dreamed of having twins." Back at the Continental, the technical team made the final adjustments to the presentation that would replace Isadora's video. "Everything's synchronized," confirmed the technician. "The moment she presses the button to start her video, our material will start rolling." "And the exits?" asked Sloane, caressing her truly pregnant belly. "She won't have anywhere to run when the truth comes out." "She still doesn't know what surprise she's in for," muttered the governess, adjusting the dress Sloane would wear, an elegant model that discreetly but undeniably enhanced her real pregnancy. At the massage center, Isadora received the special delivery of her newest fake belly, a premium model that perfectly simulated a twin pregnancy. "The dress is perfect," she smiled at her assistant. "When I step onto that stage, everyone will see the future matriarch of the Whitmore Empire." Back at the Continental, Sloane observed the city through the suite's window. "She's so confident, so certain of her victory," she commented, reading Isadora's latest intercepted messages. "Little does she know that her castle of lies is about to crumble." "Ma'am," called one of Mrs. Marjorie's friends, rushing in, "Iris just sent more evidence from the hospital. We have records of every time Isadora forged test results. And there's more, we found the poison supplier. He's willing to testify." The afternoon advanced rapidly. At the Imperial Hotel, Isadora rehearsed her grand moment in front of the big screen. First the photo shoot pictures, then the ultrasound, and then, she smiled maliciously, the twins' announcement. It will be perfect. At the Continental, Sloane prepared herself with silent determination. Each movement of the babies in her belly seemed to give her more strength. "Tonight," she whispered to her children, "we'll show everyone who the real mother of the Whitmore heirs is." At 7 o'clock, the first guests began to arrive at the Imperial Hotel. In the improvised dressing room, Isadora adjusted her fake belly one last time, completely oblivious to what awaited her. "It's time," said Mrs. Marjorie, observing her watch. Sloane nodded, placing her hand on her real belly where the true Whitmore twins grew. Mrs. Marjorie firmly held the folder with the evidence. Sloane's cell phone vibrated with one last message from Isadora. "Dear Sloane, what a pity you won't be here tonight to witness my moment of glory. But don't worry, I'll send photos of Garrison announcing our miracle to all of Mexican society." Sloane smiled serenely, tucking her phone into her purse. In a few hours, Isadora would learn in the harshest way that some lies are too costly. The true miracle was growing in her womb, and tonight, finally, the truth would come to light. "Shall we?" called Mrs. Marjorie, holding the suite door open. Sloane stood up, adjusting her dress one last time. In the mirror, the image of a strong and determined woman looked back at her. The night of reckoning had arrived. The Imperial Hotel's ballroom gleamed in its luxurious decor. Crystals and white flowers adorned each table, while the city's high society circulated in their evening gowns. The enormous screen dominated one wall, awaiting the moment of the grand announcement. Garrison Whitmore, impeccable in his Italian suit, received the guests' greetings near the main entrance. His proud smile betrayed no sign of the doubts that had begun to arise about his fiancée in recent days. In a private room overlooking the ballroom, Sloane and Mrs. Marjorie observed through the small window. In the center of the room, a hired technical crew made the final adjustments to the equipment that would replace Isadora's presentation. "Everything is ready, ma'am," whispered one of the technicians. "When she tries to start her video, ours will begin automatically. There's no way for her to prevent or interrupt it." The main doors opened in a dramatic motion. Isadora appeared, dazzling in a white haute couture dress specially designed to accentuate her fake pregnant belly. Her radiant smile concealed the snake she was as she gracefully walked the red carpet. "Look at her, Mrs." Marjorie murmured with disgust, "parading with that fake belly like she's a queen." Sloane merely watched, one protective hand over her own womb where the true Whitmore heirs grew. Garrison walked up to Isadora, kissing her softly. "So you look stunning, my love," he said, his hand resting on the false belly. The gesture made Sloane's stomach churn. How many times had he done the same with her, eagerly awaiting a child that never came? Isadora circulated through the ballroom, receiving compliments and congratulations. "It's a blessing," she repeated, her false modesty making Sloane clench her fists in anger. Garrison has always dreamed of being a father. "Calm down, my child," Mrs. Marjorie whispered, holding Sloane's hand. "Soon everyone will see the true face of this viper." The master of ceremonies took the stage, adjusting the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Imperial Hotel's annual charity gala. Tonight we have a very special presentation." Backstage, Isadora made final adjustments to her appearance. An assistant sprayed water on her face to simulate the pregnancy glow, while she checked once more that the fake belly was perfectly positioned. "So meticulous with her lie," Sloane observed, watching through the window. Little does she know that in a few minutes, her whole charade will come crashing down. Garrison took the stage, his proud smile lighting up his face. "Friends, family, tonight is very special for me. As you all know, I've always dreamed of being a father." Sloane felt her babies move, as if responding to their father's voice. A solitary tear rolled down her face as she watched the man she had loved for so many years, about to make a fool of himself in front of all of society. Iris, still with visible marks from her fall, waited in an adjacent room. Her video testimony would be the final piece of the puzzle that would destroy Isadora. "The moment is coming," Mrs. Marjorie murmured, clutching the folder with all the evidence against her former employer. Photos, receipts, fake exams, everything organized chronologically to show the extent of Isadora's fraud. Isadora began her walk to the stage, one hand gracefully resting on her false belly. Her eyes shone with anticipated triumph, completely oblivious to the storm about to destroy her castle of lies. "My love," Garrison extended his hand to help her up the stage steps. "Come share our happiness with everyone." Sloane took a deep breath, feeling the moment of truth approaching. Mrs. Marjorie squeezed her hand in silent support. In the makeshift control center, the technicians positioned their fingers over the controls, ready to start the true presentation. "Tonight," Isadora's melodious voice rang through the microphone, "I have a very special revelation to make." She gestured for them to start her presentation on the screen. Isadora's finger hovered over the remote control, about to start her video of lies. She didn't notice the small smile that escaped Sloane's lips from the shadows, nor did she notice Iris discreetly positioning herself near the stage, ready for her moment of redemption. The moment of truth had arrived. Isadora's finger pressed the remote control, expecting to see her fake pregnancy photo shoot. Instead, the screen displayed an image that made her blood run cold. A photo of a receipt for a purchased silicone fake belly, with her name and address clearly visible. But what is this?" she stuttered, frantically pressing the remote buttons. The presentation continued relentlessly, photos of her trying on different sizes of fake bellies, emails exchanged with suppliers, doctored pregnancy tests. A murmur of shock ran through the ballroom. Garrison, still beside her on stage, took a step back, all color draining from his face. "Isadora, what does this mean?" Iris's voice filled the room through the speakers, accompanying images of her in the hospital. "I confirm that I helped Isadora Sterling fake her pregnancy. All the tests were forged. The belly is artificial, bought especially to deceive Mr. Whitmore." The guests began to rise from their tables, pointing and whispering. Isadora, in desperation, tried to rip out the cables from the projection system, but nothing worked. The images continued relentlessly. Her removing the fake belly in her apartment, messages of her planning every step of the deception. "It's a lie!" she screamed, her shrill voice echoing through the hall. "It's all a setup!" "Garrison, my love, don't believe this." But Garrison was no longer listening. His eyes were fixed on the big screen where the security camera footage from the mansion was now playing, the exact moment when Isadora pushed Sloane down the stairs. The sound of the guests' horrified whispers grew with each new revelation. "Murderer!" someone shouted from the audience. "She tried to kill the ex-wife." Isadora spun in circles like a cornered animal. Her once elegant white dress now seemed to suffocate her. In her desperation, she stumbled, and the fake belly visibly shifted under the fabric. Garrison, finally emerging from his stupor, approached her. Without saying a word, he extended his hand and touched the fake belly. The cold artificial silicone under his fingers was the final confirmation he needed. "All this time," his voice came out choked, "all this time you lied to me. You made me abandon Sloane for a sham." The guests began to move away from Isadora as if she were a leper. Some ladies made the sign of the cross, others shook their heads in disapproval. Years of carefully cultivated social connections crumbled before her eyes. "Garrison," she tried one last time, grabbing his arm, "I did it for love. I just wanted—" In a final act of desperation, Isadora ripped off the fake belly and threw it on the floor. The object rolled across the stage like a final confession of her sham, stopping at Sloane's feet. "You don't understand," she shouted, makeup smeared by tears. "She doesn't deserve him. She's barren. Wretch!" The sham was ending. The Imperial Hotel ballroom had turned into a scene of chaos and commotion. Isadora, once the queen of the night, was now cornered in the center of the hall, her sham completely exposed. The fake belly lay on the floor as final evidence of her lie, while the flashes from the guests' cell phones captured every second of her humiliation. "Garrison, please," she tried one last time, her voice breaking. "Everything I did was for love. I just wanted—" "Love?" Garrison's voice thundered through the hall. "You call trying to kill Sloane love? Faking a pregnancy? Making me kick my wife out of the house with lies?" He approached her, his eyes sparking with fury. "You're a criminal, Isadora, a fraud." From the private room, Sloane and Mrs. Marjorie watched it all in silence. "The mask has finally fallen," the governess whispered, squeezing her protégé's hand. "Look, everyone." Garrison held up the fake belly, showing it to the horrified guests. "See how far this woman went to deceive me, to destroy my marriage, to try to kill my wife." The murmurs of indignation grew in the hall. High society ladies who had once fawned over Isadora now looked at her with utter disdain. Men who had admired her beauty turned their faces away, disgusted by her cruelty. "You're nothing," Garrison continued, each word laden with contempt. "A con artist, a liar who took advantage of my dream of being a father to destroy my family." Isadora, who had always maintained an air of sophistication, began to show her true nature. Her pretty face contorted into a mask of pure hatred. "You think it's over, Garrison? You think humiliating me like this won't have consequences? Get out," he roared, pointing to the door. "Get out of this party, get out of my life. You're dead to the city's society." The guests began to shout and point, some even applauding Isadora's public expulsion. She spun slowly, watching the faces that had once fawned over her, now twisted in revulsion and mockery. "Treat me like this? Me?" she screamed, ripping off the diamond necklace Garrison had given her and throwing it at his feet. "You have no idea what I'm capable of, Garrison Whitmore. You have no idea of the hell I'll bring to your life." Before anyone could react, Isadora grabbed a champagne flute and hurled it at the screen, where the evidence of her lies was still playing. The glass shattered into 1,000 pieces, but the images continued relentlessly. exposing every detail of her sham. At the door of the hall, she turned around one last time, her face a mixture of fury and a promise of revenge. "This isn't over," she shouted. "You'll all regret this, especially you, Garrison, and that idiot Sloane. Oh, she'll pay for all of this." With those words, Isadora disappeared into the night, leaving behind only the echo of her screams and the fake belly as evidence of her monumental lie. The silence that followed was deafening. Garrison remained in the center of the hall, the reality of everything that had happened finally weighing on his shoulders. He had kicked Sloane out of the house, believed the lies of a con artist, destroyed his marriage for a sham. "My God," he murmured, falling to his knees in the middle of the hall. "What have I done?" From the private room, Sloane watched the final scene with a mixture of emotions. There was no satisfaction on her face, only deep sadness for the man she had once loved. "Come, my child," Mrs. Marjorie whispered. "Our part here is done. Leave him with his remorse." Outside the hotel, inside her luxury car, Isadora watched the lights of the ballroom with hatred in her eyes. Her hands trembled as she dialed a number on her cell phone. "Iris, you useless traitor. Think it's over? Oh no." That was just the beginning. Sloane and Garrison will find that toying with me was the biggest mistake of their lives. Time would pass, but that night would forever change the fate of everyone involved. 5 years had passed since that fateful night at the Imperial Hotel. The afternoon sun illuminated Garrison Whitmore's luxurious office, where he sat in his leather armchair, gazing at the city through the panoramic window. At 50, his hair had more grey strands and deep lines marked his face, not just from age, but from the weight of regret he carried. On his desk, a half-empty liquor bottle and an open newspaper showed the news that had disturbed his solitary routine. Isadora Sterling, seen working as a nanny in popular daycare after fake pregnancy scandal. The photo showed his ex-fiancée, now without the glamour and luxury of before, caring for children in a humble neighborhood. "Karma," he muttered, pouring himself another drink. His eyes wandered to the only photo he kept on his desk, him and Sloane on their wedding day 15 years ago. How much time wasted, how many mistakes made out of pride and folly. Garrison had tried to find Sloane countless times in the past years. He hired investigators, scoured records, but she seemed to have vanished completely. Even Mrs. Marjorie, the old housekeeper, had disappeared without a trace. "Mr. Whitmore?" His new secretary interrupted his thoughts. "I found something that may interest you." She placed a brown envelope on his desk. One of the old mansion staff kept in touch with Mrs. Marjorie. "She has an address." Garrison nearly spilled his drink in his haste to open the envelope. A slip of paper contained an address in a quiet residential neighborhood of the city. His hands trembled as he read and reread the words. That same afternoon, his private driver took him through the tree-lined streets of the neighborhood. Garrison watched the houses pass, his heart beating faster and faster. The car stopped in front of a white house with a beautiful garden. Red marjories, Sloane's favorites, lined the path to the door. "Wait here," he ordered the driver, nervously adjusting his tie before getting out of the car. Each step down the stone path felt like an eternity. Memories of the past 5 years haunted him. Lonely nights in the empty mansion, silent dinners, the absence of the love he had so foolishly cast aside. When he finally reached the door, Garrison hesitated. What would he say? How could he ask forgiveness for so much suffering caused? Before he could ring the bell, he heard children's laughter coming from the side garden. His heart stopped for a moment. Following the sound, he carefully rounded the house. That's when he saw them. 2 identical boys around 5 years old playing on a swing set. They had the same dark eyes as him, the same face shape. It was like looking at doubled childhood photos of himself. Garrison felt his legs weaken. He had to lean against the house wall to keep from falling. The boys continued their innocent play, oblivious to the man watching them with tears in his eyes. "Orion! Elio!" a familiar voice called from inside the house. "Snack time!" "Coming, Mom!" they replied in unison, running inside. Garrison remained paralyzed, unable to move. Twins. Sloane had given birth to twins, his sons, the Whitmore heirs he had so desired. The irony of fate was cruel. While he believed Isadora's lies about a fake twin pregnancy, his true sons grew up far from him. The sound of the side door opening snapped him back to reality. Garrison turned slowly. knowing he would finally face the consequences of his choices. Mrs. Marjorie stood at the door, a tray of snacks in her hands and a look of shock on her aged face. "Mr. Garrison," she murmured, quickly setting the tray down on a nearby table. "Marjorie." His voice came out hoarse, choked with emotion. "Those boys, they're—" "Yes," she replied firmly, positioning herself as a guardian between him and the door. "They are your sons, the sons you rejected along with their mother 5 years ago." Garrison took a step forward, but Mrs. Marjorie raised her hand in a warning gesture. "Don't you dare," she said, her voice heavy with 5 years of contained resentment. "Sloan has built a new life here, a happy life, away from your lies and your pride." From inside the house, the laughter of the boys echoed like a sweet torture. Garrison could hear Sloan's voice too, soft and loving as he remembered, talking with his sons, the sons he never knew existed. "Please," he begged, tears streaming freely down his face. "I need to talk to her. I need to meet my sons." "Your sons?" A familiar voice sounded behind Mrs. Marjorie. Sloan had appeared at the door, more beautiful than he remembered, her eyes shining with a strength he had never noticed before. "You lost that right a long time ago, Garrison." "Mummy, who is that man?" The identical voices of the twins broke the tense silence of the garden. Garrison couldn't take his eyes off the boys. It was like looking into a mirrored past of his own duplicated. The same dark eyes, the same face shape, even the way they tilted their heads slightly when curious. "No one important, my loves," Sloan replied firmly, but her voice wavered slightly. "Mrs. Marjorie, please take the boys inside." Garrison took a step forward, his voice choked. "Please, Sloan, they're my sons, I have the right." "Right?" Sloan interrupted him, her voice cutting like ice. "What right do you have, Garrison? The right you lost when you kicked me out of the house, or when you believed that woman's lies without even giving me a chance to explain?" The twins watched the scene with growing curiosity. Orion, the more talkative of the two, tugged at the hem of his mother's dress. "Mommy, he looks like us in the old photo album." Garrison felt his heart clench. So they had pictures of him? Sloan had kept some memory of him, even if hidden in an old album. 5 years, Garrison," Sloan continued, placing herself protectively in front of her sons. 5 years that you weren't here. You weren't present when they were born, when they took their first steps, when they said their first words, Mom. "I didn't know," he protested, tears streaming down his face. "How could I know? You never told me you were pregnant." Sloan laughed without humor. "Tell you when? When you kicked me out? Or when you were too busy parading your pregnant fiancé around society?" Her voice shook with barely contained anger. "That woman pretended to be expecting twins, Garrison. Twins. And you didn't even notice the cruel irony of fate." Mrs. Marjorie was trying to usher the boys inside, but they resisted, fascinated by the unfolding scene. Elio, the more observant one, studied Garrison's face intently. "Ma'am," Garrison addressed his former governess, "you knew all along. Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because the lady asked me not to," Mrs. Marjorie answered firmly. "And after seeing how you treated her, how could I trust that you would treat these children well?" Garrison sank to his knees on the lawn, the weight of his choices finally crushing him completely. "My children, my boys," he sobbed. "Please, Sloan, let me get to know them. Let me be a part of their lives." "No," Sloan's answer was immediate and definite. "They have a happy life here, a stable life, without drama or lies. I won't let you come into their lives now and then disappear again when you find another Isadora." "I would never," Garrison began, but Sloan cut him off again. "If you try anything legal, if you try to claim any rights over them, I'll expose everything in court. I have proof of how you kicked me out, of your behavior, everything. Don't think it will be easy to convince a judge that you deserve to be a father now." The twins, sensing the rising tension, finally allowed Mrs. Marjorie to lead them inside. The last look they cast Garrison was filled with innocent curiosity, a curiosity he might never get the chance to satisfy. "Sloan, please," he begged one last time. "They're the only family I have left. They're my sons." "No, Garrison," she replied, her voice softer now but no less determined. "They're my sons. I raised them alone. I dried their tears. I nursed their fevers. I celebrated every milestone. You're just the man who abandoned us before even knowing we existed. With those words, Sloane turned to go inside. Before closing the door, she looked back at her ex-husband, still kneeling on the lawn. "Go away, Garrison. Go back to your empty mansion and your millions. Leave us in peace with the life we built without you." The door clicked softly shut, leaving Garrison alone with the crushing weight of his past choices and the realization of what he had lost, not just his wife, but the children he had always dreamed of. Garrison watched the scene with a mixture of jealousy and despair. It was obvious that this man, Griffin, was a part of his children's lives in a way he never had a chance to be. "Oh, sorry," Griffin finally noticed Garrison's presence. "I didn't know you had a visitor." His tone was polite, but his eyes showed he knew exactly who that defeated man standing in the garden was. "He was just leaving," Sloane said firmly, taking the flowers Griffin had brought, daisies, her favorites, not marguerites like Garrison always insisted on giving. "Sloane," Garrison made one last attempt, his voice broken, "please, at least let me get to know them. I can pay child support, I can." "Money?" Sloane cut him off, her voice cutting. "You think that's what your children need? They have everything they need here, love, stability, a family that will never abandon them for lies." Griffin gently placed a hand on Sloane's shoulder, a silent gesture of support that made Garrison's blood boil. The twins, sensing the tension, instinctively moved closer to their uncle, who they clearly saw as a father figure. "My lawyers will be in touch," Sloane repeated. "If you try anything legal, if you try to approach the children without authorization, I will expose everything. Every lie you believed, every moment you chose a stranger over your own wife." Garrison took one last look at his children, so perfect, so alike to him, and yet complete strangers. Orion waved shyly, but Elio hid behind Griffin's legs. "Come on, kids," Griffin called softly. "How about we put together that dinosaur puzzle I brought?" The children ran excitedly inside, their excited voices discussing which dinosaur was the coolest. The sound of their happiness, a happiness built without him, was the greatest punishment Garrison could receive. As he walked back to his car, defeated, Garrison heard Sloane's voice one last time. "Choices have consequences, Garrison. You chose to believe lies, now live with it." The door closed definitively, and through the window, Garrison saw the scene that would haunt him forever. His children, happy and smiling, assembling a puzzle with Griffin, while Sloane watched them with love. The family that could have been his, now just a lost dream due to his own foolish choices. His driver waited patiently. "Home, sir?" Garrison, his voice empty, replied, "Yes, to my empty home." The car drove off slowly, taking him back to his solitary life, while behind him remained the family he would never truly know, his children, who would grow up calling another man father. The weight of his choices had never felt heavier. Days later, in the cozy garden of the Lancaster family home, the scent of barbecue filled the air as childish laughter echoed through the Sunday afternoon. Griffin Lancaster, the respected pediatrician at the city's central hospital, skillfully turned the pieces of meat on the grill while watching his adopted children play in the pool with love. "Daddy, look," shouted Orion, doing a somersault in the water. Elio, more cautious, applauded his brother from the pool's edge. Griffin smiled, still marveling at how, after 3 years of marriage to Sloane, that word "daddy" still warmed his heart every time he heard it. Sloane came out of the kitchen carrying a bowl of salad, her face radiant with happiness. She wore an apron over her light dress, and her hair was tied in a casual bun. It was a very different image from the socialite she used to be, but she had never been happier. "Love," she called Griffin, "the Pembrokes are arriving in half an hour for lunch. The kids need to get changed." "Boys," Griffin called with gentle authority, "time for a bath. Uncle Rowan and Aunt Vivian are coming with Alden to play." The twins got out of the pool without protesting, one of Griffin's many accomplishments. He had entered their lives 2 years after their birth, first as the attentive pediatrician who took care of their fevers and scrapes, then as the friend who brought books and educational toys, and finally as the father they chose to love. "I still remember the day we met," Sloane commented, hugging her husband from behind as he finished grilling the meat. "You were so kind when Orion had that asthma attack." "How could I not be kind?" Griffin turned to kiss her forehead. A single mother, clearly exhausted with 2 sick babies, and still the strongest woman I've ever met. Inside the house, they could hear the twins chatting animatedly as they got ready. Their voices were punctuated by laughter and the occasional, "Dad, where's my dinosaur shirt?" "Here," Griffin replied, laughing. "In the second drawer, as always." The Lancasters' life was like this: simple, organized, filled with love. Griffin never tried to replace Garrison, never forced his presence. Instead, he earned his place in the family with patience, dedication, and unconditional love. "Remember when you proposed to me?" Sloane smiled, helping to set the garden table. "The boys had just started calling you Dad. How could I forget?" Griffin placed the last pieces of meat on a platter. Orion said, "Since you're our dad, why don't you just marry Mom?" And Elio added, "That way it's all official." The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of the Pembrokes, the couple's best friends. Rowan was Griffin's colleague at the hospital, and his wife Vivian had become Sloane's best friend. Their son Alden, the same age as the twins, completed the inseparable trio of friends. "Uncle Rowan!" The twins came running down the stairs, now impeccably dressed. Griffin watched with pride as they greeted the guests politely, before dragging Alden away to show him their new toys. "This house always so full of life," commented Vivian, embracing Sloane. "Who would have thought, friend? After everything you went through." Sloane looked at her family with eyes brimming with happiness. Griffin was now playing tag with the children, his renowned doctor's coat completely forgotten as he ran through the garden like a boy. "Do you know what's most incredible?" she whispered to her friend. "Griffin never wanted the boys to forget Garrison. He has kept all the old photos, answers honestly when they ask questions about their biological father. But at the same time, he's more of a father to them than Garrison ever was," Vivian completed, observing how Griffin was now teaching the three boys to do a science experiment with soda and mints. The afternoon was unfolding perfectly, like every Sunday at the Lancaster house. After lunch, Griffin organized a small soccer game in the garden. "Motor coordination training," he joked, always mixing his medical vocation with his paternal one. "Daddy," Elio approached Griffin shyly during a break in the game. "Can you teach me that special kick again?" Griffin smiled, picking up the ball. "Sure, champ, come here." He spent the next few minutes patiently demonstrating the technique, celebrating every little progress of his son. Sloane watched the scene from the porch, her heart overflowing with love. Griffin never needed exams or anything else to love his children. He chose them day after day, in every feverish night, in every homework assignment, in every scraped knee. "Mommy!" Orion ran up to her, breathless and smiling. "Look what Daddy taught me." He did an awkward little kick with the ball, almost falling in the process. "Amazing, my love," she applauded, exchanging a knowing look with Griffin. This was her true happy ending. Not the fairy tale of society she had lived with Garrison, but something far more valuable. A family built on foundations of true love and daily choices to remain, care for, and love. Night was beginning to fall over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink. The children, exhausted and happy, now slept on the living room sofa while the adults chatted quietly on the porch. Griffin held Sloane's hand, their intertwined fingers silently telling the story of a love that was born of kindness and grew through dedication. This was true love, not the one that demands perfection, but the one that chooses to stay, that builds, that forgives, that grows. And Sloane finally was at peace. The adaptation to the new life did not happen overnight. Sloane remembered well the first months after Griffin officially entered their lives. The little discoveries, the adjustments, the doubts being replaced by certainties. "Mom," Elio had asked one night while Griffin read them a story before bed, "why doesn't Uncle Griffin live with us all the time?" The innocent question made Sloane freeze, but Griffin kept his calm, gently closing the storybook. "Because some things need to happen in the right time," he answered wisely. "Like when you learn to swim, first we learn to float, then to kick our legs." Now watching her children help Griffin organize his collection of medical books in the home office, Sloane smiled, remembering those early moments. The move to the new house had been a milestone, no longer the apartment she had rented when fleeing her previous life, but a home chosen together, where every room told the story of their reconstituted family. Across the street, partially hidden behind a tree, Garrison watched the scene through the window. It had become a habit in recent months, appearing discreetly, just to see his children from afar. His driver, Jose, waited patiently in the car. "The boys are growing up so fast," Garrison muttered to himself, seeing Orion proudly lift a heavy anatomy book, while Griffin applauded his effort. Inside the house, life went on. Griffin had turned the old guest room into a small educational laboratory, where he taught the twins about science through fun experiments. "Dad, look!" Orion exclaimed, watching a chemical reaction bubble in a test tube. "It's changing color, just like you said." "It's the chemical change," Griffin patiently explained. "Do you remember what that means?" Elio, always the more studious one, recited the explanation they had learned, making Sloane smile from the doorway. It was in these moments that she saw how Griffin naturally filled the role of father, not out of obligation, but out of genuine love. Garrison, still watching, felt his heart tighten as he saw the ease with which another man occupied the place that should have been his. The boys' laughter reached him like little stabs of regret. "They seem so happy," he whispered, a solitary tear rolling down his face. Inside the house, the life Sloane had built continued to flourish. The walls, once bare, were now filled with photos, the twins at their school performances, birthdays, family trips. In every image, Griffin was present, not only physically, but emotionally connected. "Love," Griffin called Sloane as the boys put away the experiment equipment. "We need to decide about the holidays. The boys are dying to go to that science camp." "The astronomy one?" She smiled. "Oh, you've already picked out which telescope you're going to buy them, haven't you?" Griffin blushed lightly, caught in his fatherly excitement. "Well, it's important to encourage scientific curiosity." Griffin was carrying a telescope, carefully positioning it while explaining something about constellations to the fascinated boys. Sloane joined them, bringing hot chocolate on a tray. "Look, Dad," Elio's excited voice cut through the night. "It's that constellation you showed in the book." "Exactly," Griffin replied proudly. "It's Orion, see the belt right here." Griffin wasn't just the man Sloane had chosen to love. He was the father her children had chosen to have. The Lancaster family continued their astronomy lesson. Elio and Orion took turns at the telescope, while Griffin patiently explained about stars and planets. Sloane watched them lovingly, silently thanking destiny which, after so much pain, had brought her this serene happiness. "You know," Griffin said to the boys, "each star has its own story. Some shine brighter, others less, but all are important to form the sky we see." "Like our family?" Orion asked innocently. "Exactly like our family," Griffin replied, exchanging a significant look with Sloane. "Each of us shines in our own way, but together we form something even more special." The next day, the school's party hall was decorated with scientific themes for the elementary school graduation. Planets, stars, and colorful chemical formulas adorned the walls, perfectly reflecting the passion Griffin had awakened in the twins for science. Elio and Orion, dressed in their children's gowns, proudly held their certificates for Best Scientific Project of the Year. In the front row, Sloane cried discreetly, while Griffin filmed everything, his chest puffed with fatherly pride. "And now," announced the principal, "we would like to call Dr. Griffin Lancaster to present the Special Science Award established by him at our school." At the back of the auditorium, partially hidden behind a column, Garrison watched the scene. His eyes burned with unshed tears as he saw his biological children call another man Dad with such love and ease. "And we want to thank especially our dad," Elio spoke into the microphone, his voice small but firm, "who taught us that science is everywhere. And that love is also science," Orion completed, "because it has chemistry." The audience laughed, and Griffin hugged the boys, his eyes shining with emotion. Sloane joined them on stage, and for a moment they formed the perfect portrait of a happy family. The Lancaster family celebrated with friends. Eldon, the Pembroke's son, had joined the twins, and the three children animatedly showed their science projects to the guests. "You know," Sloane said softly to Griffin as they watched the children, "sometimes I think about how ironic life is. I thought I couldn't have children, and now I have not only two wonderful boys, but also a man who chooses to be their father every day." Griffin hugged her, kissing her forehead. "I choose you all every day, my love, and I will keep choosing." Griffin helped the twins put away their science projects. Elio, ever observant, tugged on his adoptive father's sleeve. "Dad, do you think we'll be doctors like you one day?" Griffin knelt down to be at eye level with the boys. You can be whatever you want, champions, doctors, astronauts, scientists. The important thing is to be happy and do good. Sloane watched the scene with her heart overflowing with love. In her pocket, the old wedding ring from her marriage to Garrison, which she had kept all these years, weighed as a reminder of the past. Discreetly, she dropped it into the nearest trash can. "Shall we go home?" she called, opening her arms to her family. As the Lancasters left happily for their home, Sloane's heart was finally at peace as she drove home with her true family. True love, after all, wasn't in the plans we make, but in the daily choices of those who decide to stay, love and build together, step by step, day by day, a true home. In another reality, the Pequeños Pasos daycare in the city's poorest neighborhood was a complete contrast to the luxurious life Isadora once led. The peeling walls painted in faded colors and the persistent smell of cheap food and diapers were her new normal. Wearing a simple cotton uniform, very different from the designer dresses she used to wear, she cleaned the dirty floor after another day of work. "Miss Isadora," called Mrs. Winona, the stern owner of the daycare who knew her past well. "The children's bathroom is clogged again. I need you to clean it before you leave." Isadora closed her eyes, swallowing her pride along with the bile that rose in her throat. "Yes, ma'am," she replied, her once perfectly manicured hands now rough and chapped from hard work. As she unclogged the children's bathroom, her mind wandered to her former life. The luxurious apartment in a noble neighborhood, the expensive jewelry, the imported cars, all lost after the scandal. Her name had become synonymous with fraud and lies in Mexican high society. "Look who's here," a mocking voice sounded behind her. It was Juliet, the mother of one of the students who loved to provoke her. The ex-society lady cleaning the toilet. How the mighty have fallen, huh? Isadora tightened her grip on the toilet brush handle, containing the urge to retaliate. She couldn't afford to lose this job. It was the only place that accepted her after all the doors closed. "My daughter told me you tried to teach etiquette to the children today," Juliet continued, laughing. "Just imagine, teaching about silver cutlery to children who barely have anything to eat. You really don't learn, do you?" The other mothers arriving to pick up their children joined in the laughter. Isadora continued her work, tears of humiliation mingling with the dirty bathroom water. In her small one-room apartment, very different from the penthouse she used to have, Isadora kept some relics from her former life. A photo with Garrison, a pair of expensive shoes, and the fake silicone belly that had ruined everything. Sometimes, on her lonely nights, she would embrace it, remembering how close she had come to getting everything she wanted. "Last warning, Isadora," Mrs. Winona had said earlier that day. "If you keep trying to teach those high society nonsense to the children, I'll have to fire you. They need to learn useful things, not how to hold a champagne glass. The measly salary barely paid the rent and bought food." Her former friends from high society had blocked her on all social media. The only ones who still spoke to her were the debt collectors from the credit cards she had maxed out in her final days of luxury. "Hey, aren't you that woman from TV?" asked a water delivery man, making Isadora shrink in shame. "The one who faked being pregnant with twins. My wife watched the whole scandal in the newspaper." Each day was a new humiliation. The daycare children, innocent in their cruelty, sometimes played pretend to be Aunt Isadora, stuffing their shirts with pillows and pretending to be pregnant. During lunchtime, as she served porridge to the little ones, Isadora saw her reflection in the daycare window, her bare face, untreated hair, deep circles marking years of decay. Where was that elegant woman who had once nearly become Mrs. Whitmore? "Auntie Isadora," called one of the little ones, spilling porridge on his already stained uniform. "Why are you crying?" She quickly wiped away the tears, forcing a smile. "It's nothing, dear. Auntie's just tired." At the end of the day, after cleaning the bathroom, changing soiled diapers, and enduring more taunts from the mothers, Isadora walked to her miserable apartment. On the way, she passed a newsstand. On the front page, a photo caught her eye. Sloane and her perfect family at the inauguration of a new pediatric wing at the hospital. The newsstand vendor quoted the price of the paper, noticing her interest. "I don't have any money," she mumbled, turning her face away. In her apartment, sitting on her small bed with protruding springs, Isadora opened her last bottle of cheap wine, a pale imitation of the premium labels she used to drink. "Happy birthday to me," she whispered to the empty room, raising her plastic cup in a solitary toast. She had turned 35, but seemed to have aged decades since the scandal. On the peeling wall, a cracked mirror reflected the image of a woman destroyed by her own ambition. The poetic justice of her fate could not be clearer. She, who had once pretended to carry the Whitmore heirs, now spent her days caring for others' children with no hope of having her own. The morning at the daycare began with yet another confrontation. A group of mothers was gathered at the gate, whispering and pointing as Isadora tried to organize the children's backpacks. "They say she tried to kill the millionaire's ex-wife," one of them whispered, loud enough for Isadora to hear. "Pushed her down the stairs when she found out she was pregnant with the twins. And she even faked a pregnancy," another chimed in. "Used a fake belly. Can you believe we leave our children with someone like that?" Isadora gripped a small backpack tightly, remembering her former imported handbags, all sold to pay off debts. The cheap perfume she wore was a sad parody of the imported ones she used to collect. "Mrs. Alcott," she addressed one of the more vocal mothers, trying to maintain her dignity, "your son needs a diaper change. Don't touch my son," the woman snapped back. "It's bad enough I have to leave him here because I have no choice. At least the other employees are decent people." The words hit Isadora like slaps. In her mind, moments from her former life blended with her current reality. Fancy restaurant dinners replaced by cold lunchboxes, party dresses swapped for stained uniforms, society's respect turned into universal scorn. During lunchtime, as she wiped spilled mush off the floor, Isadora allowed herself to remember the day she met Garrison. How easy it had been to manipulate him, to use his desire for a child for her own ends. Now every child she cared for was a cruel reminder of what she had tried to forge. "You used to be rich, didn't you, Auntie?" one of the older children innocently asked. "My mom said you lived in a palace, but did something bad and lost everything." Tears burned her eyes as she struggled to formulate an appropriate response. How could she explain ambition, envy, and wickedness to a child? "Sometimes grown-ups make the wrong choices," was all she could say. In the afternoon, during the parents' meeting, Isadora was forced to stand in the corner, excluded from the discussions. Mrs. Winona had made it clear she was only to handle cleaning and diaper changes, no interacting with parents or participating in educational activities. "I remember seeing her in the papers," one father commented, glancing at her sideways. "She looked like a different person. All dolled up, nose in the air, now look at her." Remorse, belated and useless, weighed on her chest like lead. It wasn't just the loss of luxury and social status. It was the awareness of the evil she had caused, the lives she had tried to destroy out of sheer ambition. In her small apartment that night, Isadora found an old invitation to one of the parties she used to attend. The paper still smelled of expensive perfume. The gold lettering still shimmered in the dim light of the single working lamp. "Mrs. Isadora Sterling," she read aloud, her voice choked, "has the honor of being invited." A rat scurried across the room's corner, making her scream and drop the invitation. This was her world now, cockroaches, rats, and shattered dreams. In the tiny bathroom, she stared at her reflection in the smudged mirror. Where was that elegant woman who had planned to conquer high society? Who dreamed of becoming the Whitmore Empire's matriarch? Now all she saw was a woman prematurely aged by bitterness, with hollow eyes of one who had lost not just her possessions, but her very identity. Her phone, a basic model that replaced her former cutting-edge one, chimed with a notification. It was a social media photo, Sloane with her twins at another charity event. The 5-year-old boys were the spitting image of Garrison. "They could have been mine," she whispered to the cracked screen. "I could have been." But she didn't complete the sentence. She knew she could never have been a real mother. Her heart was too corrupted by ambition and envy. In the solitude of her night, Isadora finally allowed remorse to consume her completely. She cried for the destroyed dreams, for the harm she caused, for the person she had become. But mainly she cried for the awareness that every humiliation, every look of contempt, every moment of misery, it was all deserved. The price of ambition, she discovered too late, was not paid only with money. It was paid with the soul. On a rainy Sunday afternoon, Isadora watched through the fogged glass of a crowded bus the life that could have been hers. The vehicle stopped in front of the luxury mall, where she used to spend fortunes on designer clothes. Now, wearing her tattered daycare uniform after another day of extra work to supplement her income, she merely observed. Through the illuminated display windows, she saw a scene that made her heart ache. Sloane and her happy family were leaving an educational toy store. The now 5-year-old twins animatedly held their new presents, while Griffin, the doctor who had become their father, smiled with genuine paternal love. Sloane, more beautiful than ever, radiated a happiness that Isadora had never known. "End of the line," announced the driver, forcing Isadora to get off in the rain without an umbrella, another luxury she could no longer afford. Soaked, she walked to her small rented room. On the old television, the news showed the inauguration of a new pediatric wing at the hospital where Griffin worked. The Lancaster family was there, of course. The twins cut the ribbon along with their father, while Sloane beside them smiled proudly. "And now a business news story," continued the presenter. Garrison Whitmore, after 5 years living in Europe, sold his share in the construction company and donated a large part of his fortune to charities focused on underprivileged children. Isadora abruptly turned off the television. Her dinner, an instant noodle pack, was cooling on the makeshift table. On her old cell phone, she still kept a photo from the time when she was happy, with the fake belly, Garrison by her side, both smiling for the cameras. How empty was that smile? How false was that happiness? On the other side of the city, at the Lancaster house, a celebration was taking place. It was the twins' birthday, and the house was full of love and joy. Sloane, helping the boys blow out the candles on the cake, had that sparkle in her eyes that only true happiness brings. "Mom," Elio asked after the guests had left, "why are some people sad even when they have everything?" Sloane hugged her son, thinking about how to answer. "Because sometimes, my love, people confuse having things with having happiness." Back in her miserable room, Isadora found an envelope under the door. It was a termination letter from the daycare. After several complaints from parents, Ms. Winona had no choice. Sitting on her hard bed, Isadora finally understood the true justice of fate. It wasn't just about losing luxury and money. It was about reaping exactly what she had sown. Lies brought solitude, evil brought rejection, excessive ambition brought misery. In her last act of defeat, she took the fake belly she kept as a morbid relic of her past and threw it in the trash. Along with it went the last vestiges of her dreams of grandeur. At the Lancaster house, the twins' laughter echoed through the garden as Griffin taught them about the stars with his telescope. Sloane watched them from the porch, her heart overflowing with gratitude. Her happily ever after didn't come like a fairy tale, but was built with true love, honesty, and strength. Isadora looked at her reflection in the broken mirror one last time. At 35, she looked like she had lived several lives, all of them empty. With the last money she had, she bought a bus ticket to a small town in the countryside where no one knew her past. Before leaving, she passed in front of the Whitmore mansion, now transformed into an orphanage, Garrison's last action before leaving Mexico forever. On the inauguration plaque, a phrase that seemed to mock her: "True love never needs lies to exist." Fate had traced its course with poetic precision. Sloane, who had always been true, found real happiness. Garrison, who recognized his mistakes, found redemption in charity. And Isadora, who built her life on lies, ended up exactly as she started, alone and empty. The bus departed at dawn, taking Isadora to her self-imposed exile. Through the fogged window, the city lights were left behind, along with all her ambitions and dreams of grandeur. At the Lancaster house, the lights went out one by one. The twins slept in their rooms, dreaming of stars and scientific discoveries. Griffin and Sloane, embraced in their bed, were the living proof that true love doesn't need artifice to flourish. And so each one reaped exactly what they sowed. Sloane reaped love and family, Griffin reaped the joy of chosen fatherhood, and Isadora reaped the emptiness she had always carried inside, now without masks or disguises to hide it. Fate had done its justice. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing you exciting stories almost every day. Don't miss the next surprising narrative that's about to appear on your screen. We are immensely grateful to have you here with us. Now, you can click on the links appearing on the screen right now. We have a special selection just for you, full of valuable stories and guaranteed entertainment. See you there.